Oh crap, I forgot to turn my phone. Whoops. Might be, hold up. Let me get, I forgot to, I was like, I feel like I'm missing something. Hold up. Let me get VTube Studio running on my phone. Okay, perfect. Okay, that was a little awkward. Hello everybody. Hello. I hope everyone is doing well. Hello. It is Friday. Today's stream is gonna be different. It's not gonna be too long, hopefully. I mean, we're already at 15 minutes because I took a while. I had to check some stuff with the dog. Dog is okay, everything is fine. I need to calibrate this a little bit quickly. Okay, so okay, sorry, I'm like getting my I'm getting my thought process in. I'll be honest, I kind of tried to practice for today, but my brain is like thinking a bajillion different things. I think it's also because like I'm like still the next week is gonna be super fucking busy, if you can tell. Not like I'm about to debut a 2.0 or anything, but anyways, I'm gonna try to be a little bit focused on this stream. First off, no, you know what, I'll stop the music when I actually make the announcement. I'm not gonna stall too long, but first off let me get a drink of water just to like focus. But yeah, this stream isn't gonna be too long, hopefully, so just because I'm here to talk about something very important. Okay, so before we begin, let me add a couple of context because I don't want to stall too long. So first off, also I'm gonna lower this down for my sanity's sake. Don't worry, it's just something else. Anyways, let me add some context before we begin. So first off, I know the important announcement sounds like something kind of big. The thing is, okay, it's not anything super life-threatening or super serious. It's more like something that I needed to address. I feel like maybe calling it an important announcement might be a little bit like it might have a misunderstanding, but what it ultimately is like, sorry, I had to grab something. I just remembered something. Don't worry about it. There's something I've been meaning to address. And because we're getting to the end of 2025, we're already in December, we're about to enter 2026 in a couple of weeks, I felt that it would be perfect, especially before, I felt like it was actually perfect timing to talk about this now, not just because I'm about to debut a 2.0, but because we're about to enter a new year, and this is something that has been gnawing on me, arguably for like between the last 2 to 3 years, and it's something really important that I need to address, something that for me has been in the back of my head for a very long time. Hasn't really been the elephant in the room per se, but there have been certain things that would appear that I'm like, shit, like I gotta talk about this. And a lot of it comes down to just like there were things that I was distracted with, which is why it took a while. But yeah, I am talking about this now because again, I think this is something that I want to just get this out of the way before my debut, before my re-debut, which is like, you know, a reboot and stuff, before the new year. Like, this feels like something that this is gonna put proper closure on the topic, which is why I'm doing it, which is why in a way it is kind of important. It is important. It's important for me, but also it might be important for the people that were into this. And again, I'll update the title about this later. Real quick, I'm gonna drink water again because I have to take a medication, so give me a sec. That feels good. Okay, second thing, also, I just realized, let me do a quick sound check. Let me do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, second thing, and I'm just gonna say this real quick because I don't want to stall too long. The thing I'm about to talk about, I have actually prepared a document that I am gonna post. Don't worry, I'm not canceling nobody. Okay, for the record, I'm not canceling nobody. It's not anything that serious. Don't worry about that. Oh my god, am I canceling myself? Oh my god, no. But I made this document, because first off, it helps to organize my train of thoughts. So it's kind of organizing things. And also because what I'm about to talk about, I have a big explanation. There's actually a lot of explanations. There's the who, what, where, why, and how of it. So what I'm about to say, there is an explanation. There's like, there is a thing to it. There is like, I wrote it down all in a document to, kind of get my thought process, and we're gonna go through with the document. This stream is going to act as like the long detailed explanation, and later on I'm gonna post this document, you know, put the link and everything so that if anybody later on wants to check it out, and I'll post it on the websites related to what I'm about to talk about, so you know everyone will know about it. So yeah, so pretty much once I make the actual announcement, we're gonna go to the document and everything. And don't worry, it's not, again, not a life or death situation. This isn't me spilling the beans or talking cheese man or nothing. This is actually just me addressing something that if you are a long-time follower of mine from like my past account and everything like that, this is something that or hell, if you were here when I first became a VTuber, I did bring this up in the early days when I started, but over time I kind of stopped, especially again, this was like when I started. So again, you might know exactly what I'm about to talk about. Okay, enough stalling, enough explanations, enough sidetracking. Let's just rip out the band-aid and let me just say it as it is. So 3 years ago, I took a hiatus from working on my webcomic series called Years, and it's been 3 years since I officially took the hiatus. Oh, you know what? Let me turn this off. It's about to get serious. I took 3 years to, it's been 3 years since I took the hiatus, and pretty much I've made updates about delaying the hiatus or certain things in regards of when I was coming back, and then a lot of things happened. Basically, I'm here to announce that after a lot of thought, like after a lot of thinking, a lot of stuff, I made the choice to shelve my Years webcomic. Basically, to put it, because I'm gonna explain what that means, but also just to put it in another saying, because I don't want to use the word cancel, but the reality is I am not going to be working on the webcomic anymore. I'm not going to be making new content. I'm not going to be making any new pages. There are no new plans for no new chapters or anything related to Years. I don't want to say that it is canceled, but to basically put it, there is no plans to work on it in the foreseeable future. Pretty much when I say that it's being shelved, it's that I'm gonna stop working on it, and the project is gonna be put on my, not literal shelf, but it's more like my imaginary story building shelf where I work on, like, you know, projects, work on stuff, you know, it's kind of more of an imaginary thing. But the point is, basically that's going to be put on the shelf, and I'm not going to be working on it for the foreseeable future. Before we move to the document that gets all the juicy details about it, about the how, what, where, why, everything, I just want to say that to anybody who is disappointed by this news, I actually am very sorry. And I'm going to confess, I'm going to call myself out. I do remember back, especially between like 2022, 2023, I did remember posting updates where I talked about like, oh, like I promise I'll get to work on the next chapter, it's gonna come, blah blah blah. And the reality is, this is kind of me breaking that promise, and I know that's terrible, and I'm gonna admit I should have been better at that. I should have thought ahead before I chose to tell people that. So I do want to say I'm very sorry, and I'm sorry if this news disappoints anybody who really liked my webcomic. To anybody who loved it, thank you for supporting me. We're gonna go into all the details of it. I do have a TLDR that I wrote in the document, so without further ado, I'm just gonna go straight into the document. Okay, so this is the document. It's gray because I don't like using white. I changed the background to gray. Also, this is on literally not on Microsoft Word. It's on something called, excuse me, it's called LibreOffice Writer, which is a free version of it. It's like if you want a free version but it has all the good features. So this document basically, like, this is just me talking about, like, so I have the bullet points here, but we're gonna read it together because I also might edit it on screen. But this is basically just a document that organizes my thoughts. It talks about the, you know, all the details. I have the bullet points and everything pointed. Is it gonna show? Okay, it does show. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna go through with these details. We're gonna talk about it real quick. Let me just make sure that my stream isn't having poopy garbage quality. Okay, we should be good. Also, I'm gonna put a little bit of some background music. I'm gonna lower this. This is just to kind of have something in the background because I don't want to have just silence. So also I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I'm just doing this just to have like a little bit of background. But yeah, we're gonna go through this document together. Again, I'm gonna try not to, like, I might do a lot of explaining, but that's kind of the point of the stream, is to explain everything, explain why I'm shelving my Ynir's webcomic series and why I'm not gonna be working on it. So let's just jump into the document. So we'll start with the top part. After a couple of years of indefinite hiatus and lots of thinking and coming to terms with things, I have made the ultimate decision to shelve my Ynir's webcomic series. In case you're wondering what I mean by shelve, it means I will no longer be working on the webcomic series and have chosen to put it in my personal story building shelf for the time being. I do not want to use the word cancel, and I'll get into that reason later. But I have to be clear and say that I am no longer going to be working on any new content for Ynir's. There are no plans for any new chapters or anything related. There are a lot of reasons for this decision. To make it easy for everybody, I will make a TLDR version, or, you know, let me change that. I wrote a TLDR version right below. But for the longer, more detailed explanation, I organized it via bullet points to organize my reasonings and also to better explain things chronologically. These are the bullet points as follows. What is Ynir's about? This is a brief introduction. What happened to Ynir's, the hiatus, why I am shelving the webcomic series, the reason. So these are, we'll get to the points as is, but these are essentially the four. So I had a lot of reasons. Some major, some minor. There were a lot of, like, again, I had a lot of thought about this. I actually had this thought for the last, I want to say maybe the last 2 years. Like, I had a lot of thought. I was thinking about it. But basically, I would argue that these four reasons are kind of the big ones, the big ones that led me to make this decision. So the reasons are: reason one, focusing on other projects; reason two, not liking the writing choices; reason three, not liking the process plus constant work plus quality drop. I kind of just put it all there because they're kind of related. They're kind of related, so yeah. And then reason four, not liking the human character designs. And then before we get to the conclusion, I actually have a very important message to artists, which I put here: you're not a failure. And that is very important. That is a message. Like, out of all the things to pay attention, please pay attention to that part. That is a very important message. I think it's very important to talk about that. And then my final thoughts and conclusions. So yeah, that's pretty much the bullet point. Okay, So this is the TLDR. So this is the TLDR. Like pretty much the bullet points, I kind of wrote the bullet points because that kind of also gives a sense of why I made the choice. The TLDR is just summing up everything in one paragraph. So basically so to anybody that wants to just like head out soon, this is the TLDR. Years was a webcomic series I worked on for 3 years. Then I took a hiatus, and during the hiatus, my mental health went super bad. I couldn't work on the comic, typo. I couldn't work on the comic since 2022, but eventually got therapy and focused on taking care of myself. But then I thought about it and I made my choice. The bullet points sum it up nicely. However, to all the artists who couldn't complete a project, you still learned from it. You're still a cool artist, you're not a failure, and you really gotta stop using doomer humor a lot. We'll get to that later. It hurts you, yeah, it does. It really fucking does. Maybe one day, in a super far distant future, I might bring the series back to life, but no promises and not anytime soon. Also, I stream as a VTuber and post art online. That's like the TLDR. So I wrote that there because this document, I'm gonna post it on I'm basically gonna post it on the websites that I had DeviantArt on. I'm gonna post it on my other Twitter account. I'm gonna post this on DeviantArt, which I used to post the pages of. I'm gonna post this on Tapas, which is where I used to post the webcomic for. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna post a document, but I'll post a link to it because I don't think I can submit a document as is, but basically that's what's gonna happen. So yeah, so we're gonna begin with what is Years about, because there's some people here that don't know that I made this webcomic series. So I made a summary of it just to anybody who's wondering like what this is all about. So this is just like a quick summary. Years was a webcomic series I began in February 18, 2019. That story is about a high school boy named Nick who didn't believe in aliens or extraterrestrials. One day, a ship crashes into his backyard and he ends up meeting two aliens. These aliens, as well as the rest of their teammates, are called Years and came to Earth for a very special mission. Nick and his sister Nina spend their days balancing their everyday lives and helping the Years with their mission while hiding them from the rest of the world. This comic originally updated twice a week and then later switched to once a week. Years was a passion project and a labor of love. It ran for 3 years with a total of 6 completed chapters. It also had regular art of the characters as well as holiday art and crossover art. Back then, I was very committed to working on the series, and while it never got popular, I did have more or less a tiny community that enjoyed my comic. My original plan was to keep working on Years, as I actually had a very large story to tell with multiple arcs divided into seasons, almost like a cartoon/TV series. So what happened to it? Well, and we're gonna get to that. So what happened to Years is basically the explanation of what the hell happened in the last 3 years. Why the hiatus? Actually, I should probably put the hiatus. So for people wondering what the fuck has been going on in the last 3 years, I mean, you probably already can tell, like you probably know, but this is the explanation of what happened during the hiatus. Like you got a hint of it in the TLDR, but this is the full explanation. This all began back before May. This all happened wait. I think it's back in May of 2022. Okay, this all began back in May of 2022. That month was the month that I had finished the remaining pages of chapter 6, which at the time had begun but wasn't complete. For 3 years, I was so committed to Years that I did not want to take a hiatus of the series. I only took one mini hiatus before this time, and that was only for a month with the promised plan of returning back to a certain date. Also, I'm just gonna say this. I won't go into details, but the reason I had to take that hiatus was because I think that was during the US election seasons, and I don't really want to be online during that time. Like, I don't need to explain that. I think you could get why. So That was the real reason I took the hiatus, was because that was going on. But I told people that I would be back in December. Like, I gave them a certain date. So yes, I did take a hiatus during that time, that mini one, for a month. But I told people that I would return back by this point, and I kept that promise. But sadly, okay, so to go back, but sadly, I knew during this time I was gonna have to take another hiatus, and here's why. That summer, 3 big things were going to happen. The first was Boston Fan Expo, where me and my friend had a booth at the Artist Alley to sell art. I still needed to prepare my pieces and get my stickers and keychains to sell, so I knew I needed more free time to focus on that and less time working on comic pages. The second was a long overdue trip to Puerto Rico with my mother that would take place a week after the con. I needed to plan out the trip as well, so my free time also needed... Wait, let me rewrite that. I needed to plan out my trip. I needed to plan that trip out. So my free time, I needed to plan that trip out. So my free time also needed that too. The third was a wedding of my best friend where I was one of the bridesmaids. So yeah, I also had to focus on that as well. So yeah, pretty much, actually I'll continue. Summertime was super busy for me because of that, and summertime was super busy for me, and because of all that, again, typos, because of that, I knew, okay. So, okay, let me redo it. Sorry, typos. This is gonna have typos. Summertime was super busy for me, and because of all that, I knew working on the next chapter of Years was not going to be doable until at least September. Now, the original plan was that June and July would be my main prepping month for the 3 events. August was the month of the con and the trip, and September was the wedding. After the wedding, I was going to go back to working on the webcomic, where at the very minimum, I would get at least 10 pages, aka 2 months of pages done before the end of the year. And then I could begin posting them either in November, December, or even January for more page time. So basically the summertime, that summer, I was not going to have any time to do what I needed to do. I was not going to have time. Like, basically, the problem with, and I'll get to that later, during that time, I also worked a different job. And even though I had a little bit more free time in that job, the problem was I didn't have time to work on the keychains, prepare the Puerto Rico trip, prepare for the wedding, and make updates to the webcomic. It just wasn't doable. There was too much shit going on. So it was easier for me to finish the remaining pages, where I think they would have finished in September or August, if I recall. And then basically to the viewer, so during the summertime, you guys were gonna get pages, but basically that would have stopped in September. And the hope was that if I had continued, it would have came back in like what, November, December. So you would have only had to wait maybe like a month or 2 or something like that. So what happened despite having a plan? Well, a lot happened. Now, this sounds like a terrible excuse, but I have to be honest, in regards to September forward, I got depressed and really hated myself. My friend's wedding had caused me to question my life and direction I was going in. Oh, wait, hold on. Like I said, there's a lot of typos here. My friend's wedding had caused me to question my life and the direction I was going in. I got super insecure and my self-esteem took a hit. On top of being at the time the queen of bottling up her negative emotions, the negativity of everything really affected my mental health. Oh, so okay, I wrote the next part up. This sounds kind of terrible. Like, again, what I'm about to say might sound like kind of like I'm just throwing excuses, but this is just me being honest of what exactly happened. Like, the reality is, guys, my self-esteem and my mental health sucked that like when you are in that position, even the little things can make it hard for you to do stuff. So what I'm about to talk about might sound like something that might not seem like a good excuse, but again, my mental health was bad. My self-esteem was bad. I was hella insecure. So I was so sensitive that even the minor shit really fucking got me. And that's kind of what and I bring that up because this is something that for a while I struggled with. What I'm about to talk about, I think a lot about this, and I think about how like maybe if my mental health was better, I wouldn't have been as upset about this. But anyways, let's continue. I had tried to wait, what? Oh, sorry. I had tried so hard to bottle it up and even watched a lot of VTubers as a distraction and a way to avoid dealing with my mental health. Which, by the way, I feel like too many people do that, and that's not good for you. Like, that's like I feel like that's like a type of parasocialism nobody talks about, is people that watch VTubers as a distraction to not deal with their negative mental health. And I'm just gonna say this, people, don't ever do that to yourself. I learned that the hard way. If you're dealing with a lot of shit, I get it. Listen, nothing wrong with wanting a distraction. Absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with wanting escapism. Like, that can help process and heal. But if your way of dealing with mental health is like you never want to fix the problem, you just want a distraction all the time, that's not good. You really need a therapist. Like, I mean that in the serious way. You actually need a therapist. And I feel like we don't talk enough about the VTuber fans that are very, 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 like, have very low mental health and like use VTubers as an alternative to therapy. And it's like, no, like, you really need therapy. You really need to get a therapist, because that's not good. And I learned that the hard way. Sadly for me, one of my favorite VTubers had a silent graduation, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. While I tried to remain hopeful in December, January, February, I was very low in the depression state. Do I want to talk about? No, you know what? I'll continue. I feel like if you know me, you know who I'm talking about, but we'll continue just for the sake of it. To not go too much into about it, 2023 was a very bad and terrible year for me. I had big money issues with the IRS. My job really fucked my mental health more. I struggled to move on with the reality that my VTuber Kamiyoshi was no longer being talked about in the company they were in, and my family had a cousin situation that made my mental health problems worse. The only good thing that happened that year was that my Kamiyoshi did come back as an indie. My job laid me off with big severance pay and unemployment pay, I should say. Hold on. I know that's like a weird thing to be happy about, but like that job, honestly, there was so much shit in that job that I put up with that it's like, I'm glad I'm not in that job anymore, especially because I have a best friend that still works there, and she tells me so much fucking shit about what goes on. So it's like, in a way, this was probably a blessing in disguise. And me finally starting therapy and getting meds for my depression. So yeah, 2023 was very rough. I've talked about this. It was a very horrible year, very rough. I was just really at my lowest. Excuse me. There was a lot going on. But that year was horrible for me. I genuinely could not get back into the workflow of years. Even though I had a thumbnail version of the next chapter done, I just could not work on the series. I did the thumbnail version, if I recall, I did it back in like January or February. And I think by the end of February or like beginning of March, I was starting to stand up. But then the money issue happened, so I got really fucking depressed. And then like work happened and a bunch of other bullshit happened. So it was like I was slowly picking myself back up, and then I fell down to the ground again. So that's pretty much the explanation. I told myself that 2024 would be my healing year, which ultimately it did. Yes, it did. Thanks to therapy and focusing more on my mental health, I had gotten better. And while I'm not perfect, I'm a lot better than I was in 2022. Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. Still taking therapy, still focusing on that, doing way better now. Despite the healing, I still struggle to commit back to Ynir's. I'll explain the reason soon, but essentially I wanted to change some things up and use the next chapter to redesign and rewrite some characters. I even had plans to re-edit future chapters and make them shorter and get to the big part of the story. So yeah, during I would say 2024. Okay, yeah, I'll get to this. 2024, 2025. I had a lot of thoughts put into Ynir's again. I even did small sketches of how the characters could be reworked. But sadly, I had a lot of thoughts and reasons that made me come to the decision to shelve Ynir's. For the record, I had many reasons, but there are 4 reasons I think of that are the biggest impact. And while they are not in any particular order, I do think they are the main ones to focus on. So to kind of go a little bit into this, in 2024, last year, I reached a point where I was feeling better enough that it's like when I looked at Ynir's, I was like initially I wanted to get back into the story, but there were things that I looked at it in a different perspective and I was like, I really don't like that. I want to change that. And I was attempting to change that. I kept thinking about the characters and a lot of stuff, and I'll get into it in more details. But basically, even though I had done some art, had some ideas of how to work about it and kind of go through with it, I did a lot of brainstorming and even sketches. But there was just a point where like, again, we're gonna get into the reasons, but between the reasons and just that I'm gonna elaborate more and a few other things, it just got to a point where between 2024 and 2025, I did a lot of thinking and a lot of stuff, talking to myself about what to do, like how to do stuff. And then, yeah, and then it led to the reason, and I will get to that. Let me take a drink. Okay, why I am shelving the comic series. Reason number 1, focusing on other projects. I think this happens to every artist. Sometimes you have that one idea that you are really into for a certain period of time. Sometimes you love the idea so much that you work on it for years and years, and no matter how long it's been, you still work on it and love it. But sometimes, especially when you're young, you have that one really cool idea that you love and you work on it a lot. But sometimes you love one idea. Wait, I think I repeated it. I think I should just shorten it like this. Yeah, that works better. You still work on it and love it. Sometimes you love the idea so much, yeah. But sometimes you love one idea, but later down the line, other ideas form. Sometimes these ideas are better or more doable and more easier to work on than the other idea. Ynir's was an idea that for a long time, I really loved the idea. Hell, I still do love the characters and parts of it, and some parts of it I think are good parts. But like many storytellers, you have more than one idea you want to tell, and honestly, that happened to me. But it's not like I simply got bored of Ynir's. It's that some ideas I felt were more easier to approach and wouldn't require as much commitment as Ynir's. One of my main ideas and goals you know what, I'll just put one of my main goals. One of my main life goals is yeah, this is perfect. Again, there's gonna be some edits, so I apologize. One of my main life goals is to publish a children's book. The dream would be to have a big series based on one idea I still love, but the current goal is to just focus on one book idea I have. Have. An idea that is simple in concept, easier to approach, and wouldn't be as difficult as Ynir's was for me. Obviously, it would still not be easy and still require a lot of work, But between working on one children's book versus working on a webcomic series with multiple chapters, a children's book looks more doable. Like, okay, to kind of just explain, basically, like, the thing with Years is I like Years conceptually, and I'll get to, like, and that's kind of why I say I use the word shelf and not cancel. But the problem is, okay, when I say that there were ideas easier, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, like it's super duper easy, because obviously doing a children's book, obviously there's a lot of work, there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of process stuff. It's still difficult. But the thing that I was trying to get across, what I mean by this is that with Years, I did have more or less of an outline of how the story began, the middle part, and the ending. But over time, I realized, and I think I'll get into this later on, I'll get into this when we get into this. Basically, it got to a point where I realized that in order to get to the thing that I really wanted to get to, it was going to take a very, 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 very long time. And I'm gonna, and you know, let's continue because this will explain it. But yeah, like for me, doing a children's book just seemed like a project that, yeah, I would still put work in it, but it seemed like something that, compared to banking on a webcomic where you got multiple chapters and shit, and like it's gonna take a long ass time to get to the ending, I would rather just stick to a children's book where it can, at the very least, like compared to that, it would be more of a one and done kind of thing. You know what I mean? But again, we'll get into it. I also felt that exploring my other ideas, which included VTubing, streaming, rebooting my art and art portfolio, and other ideas would help me out more career-wise than just focusing on webcomics. They say don't put all your eggs in one basket. I felt it was important to focus on exploring other ideas I love and researching what would lead to my dreams more than risking. I feel that than risking spending years and years and years only doing Years and risk not gaining anything from it. Not to say I only worked on Years for success or popularity. It was a labor of love. I enjoyed, actually, you know what, I won't say success, I'll say for money or popularity. It was a labor of love, and I enjoyed seeing comments of people read it, but ultimately I wanted to really work on my other ideas more, especially ideas that I really loved and felt right with me. So basically, this kind of goes into what I was about to talk about. I feel like what happened in terms of like the thing with Years was that was a main project, but that project was like the one project that I had to put all my energy in. And the problem was I didn't have the energy to work on other stuff. That's why when I started the hiatus, I had to take the hiatus because I could not give my energy. I did not have enough energy as one person to prep for a con, prep for a trip to Puerto Rico, and then prep for a wedding, and then work on a webcomic pages at the same time. Like, that was just too much. That was way too fucking much. And the other thing is, I thought about this. This was one of the other big things to kind of go back on it. The thing about me in terms of what I want is that I want to publish a children's book. I want to put effort in making these children's books and getting it published, but also I wanted to, the thing is, the reason I wanted to focus on other projects as well is because I felt that deep down, one of the things that started happening to me at the end of working on Years, like before, is that there were things I really wanted to do, but I didn't have the time or energy because I was working on Years. And the thing was, even when I gave myself breaks to kind of take a break to avoid burnout, the problem is I would have a desire to work on something else that was shorter, but I wouldn't have the time to do it because I knew soon I was going to have to start working on the pages for Years again. And one of the things that can be a lot for working on a long-term webcomic is that especially like for me, okay, so like I said, I wasn't working on Years for money or popularity. I wasn't trying to do that, but there was a part of me that did have the idea that I was hoping maybe like, oh, if I worked on Years for like, okay, to be fair, I only did it for 3 years, but I had the idea, the mental idea that if I did Years for like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe I would get to a point where I could make, like, not make money, but I mean, like, I would get to a point where I could, I don't know, like, I thought about making merch to sell, setting up a Patreon. Like, I know webcomic artists that get to a point where they can, like, basically the idea was I could be in a position where I would be financially stable. Like, I wasn't asking to be rich or popular. I was just hoping for financial stability. And, like, here's the thing. You can, like you can technically make money off of that. But I find that, okay, I gotta be careful how I word it because it can get controversial. But, like, I feel like a lot of the people that were able, from what I've learned, seeing other webcomic artists, the people that can financially make money off of work on a webcomic, a lot of them are married, so they do dual income with their partners, or they were people that they built a fan base from something else they did, and then their fan base went to them working on a webcomic. So it's kind of like how, like, you have video game publishers that make a name with a famous name, and then when they become independent, they gain their fans. You know, same thing with VTubers. They'll become popular in the corpo, and then when they leave and become indie, their fans follow them. So it kind of is in a similar logic. Not to say that that's invalid. That's still cool, and they still deserve it. And obviously, I'm not trying to throw any shade or nothing like that. But what I'm saying is, for someone like me, that realistically, I'm not really a big, huge person, I find that it would have been like, how do I say? I feel like if I had continued doing Yeeniers, like, okay, I could have advertised it better. I could have tried to do advertisements and stuff, but something tells me that I don't think I would have. I feel like there's a lot of, I think there's a big risk in just banking on this one thing and expecting you to get to a point where you could be, like, super financially stable, unless you have, like, something else that kind of builds up upon it. And the reality is, I didn't have anything built up beforehand, so this was something that, like, would have been a bigger risk, you know? It would have been a much bigger risk. So that's what I mean by saying, like, exploring other projects, other ideas. Like, at least, you know, again, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So I'm spreading my eggs out between things like doing art, streaming, video games, and I have some ideas of what I want to do for 2026, especially, you know, doing the children's book. That's what I'm doing. That was what I meant by this. But yeah, this still kind of summarizes it pretty well. Reason number 2, not liking the right choices. Let me get a drink of water. Reason number 2, not liking the writing choices. Also, like a lot of young artists, sometimes you have the one idea you love really much and you commit to it and immediately make it a big story because you love it so much. But as you grow older and you gain a lot of knowledge of storytelling and writing characters, you realize that maybe your idea from it could have been workshopped longer and then immediately bringing it to life. That was my biggest experience with Yeeniers. I said it before that I still love Yeeniers, and I think a lot of parts of it can still work. So you may be wondering, if that's true, why shelve it? The truth is, I started to look at some of my writing choices and character choices, and over time, I wasn't super happy with the choices I made. I felt like some characters had not been fully fleshed out, and some had issues that I felt did not work in the long run. Okay, we're getting into some interesting stuff. But yeah, I definitely kind of, like, really went into Yeeniers, like it's like the whole thing where sometimes you're blinded by love, and it's nothing wrong, and I think some ideas still work with Yeeniers, but there were things that in the long run I felt like I could have workshopped, I could have rewrote better. And I think in terms of writing choices, I think the overall story was fine, but I think the characters had a lot of issues, and we're about to digest into that. Well, actually, no, we're gonna start with the story, because there were issues I did have with the story. Some of the story choices in some chapters did get re-edited from the original versions to the current versions, but some of the later ones I wasn't 100% happy with, and I would have to remake the entire script from scratch. I had bigger plans for Ymir, which I still love the ideas, but the path to getting them wasn't smooth and had a lot of bumps. I did have a structure for the arcs, but some of the chapter ideas for them were not the best. One example of a re-edit I had to do was chapter 6. The original version of the script had Nick dealing with 3 homeless folk who were using the ship as a shelter. Yeah, I'm about to call myself out. I'm about to cancel myself. I'm about to... This is my own... Guys, this is my own Google Docie. I'm canceling myself. That's what I'm about to do. Okay, but... Alright, let me get back to it. He and the others would scare them out to reclaim the ship, and then later on find them, apologize, and help them go to a homeless shelter. I really don't know why college me thought that a story about a teen harassing and scaring off 3 homeless people was a good idea. Also, the fact that the 3 homeless folks were the villains of the chapter did not sit well with me. Yeah, again, I'm calling myself out. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. So, yeah, like, I didn't know what the fuck I was thinking, guys. So, yeah, like, I'm calling myself out here. This was a stupid idea, dumb, it was insensitive. So I redid the chapter to the current version where it's 3 private school students instead of the homeless. And basically, like, yeah, I was just thinking to myself, I feel like a teen having to harass 3 homeless folks that, you know, it's like, yeah, they found the ship and they made it into their shelter. It's like, yeah, that obviously is a terrible look. And I was like, what the fuck was I thinking? So that's why I changed the characters to being these private school students, because they're, and you know, in the chapter, they're kind of smug. They're these privileged, like, know-it-all, like, oh, I'm better than you, na-na-na boo-boo type students. I feel like more people could be like, you know, they're not going to empathize. Like, I feel like it's easier to villainize like a bunch of like privileged private school kids that are probably, well, I wouldn't say they're rich, but they're definitely like, they go to private school, so they probably have some kind of a privilege, versus like 3 homeless folk that they really don't, like, you know, it's like, yeah, like, again, I'm canceling my past self out here. So stupid ass writing decision, and honestly, I don't regret rewriting it. I made the right call. Okay, now we're gonna get into the characters, because this is a big one. Also, I need let me go grab, I need to get a cough drop. I swear, every time I have to talk, it's like my voice gets, I'm not used to talking, guys. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I like literally, I was trying to find a cough drop and I remembered like where it was, but I accidentally put my hand in a bag of fucking turmeric powder, because the bag for the cough drop and the turmeric powder look similar. So, but yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so now we're gonna get into the the characters. Let me scroll this up. Yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Like I said, this shouldn't be a long stream, even though we're an hour in, but don't worry, this shouldn't be super long. There were also issues with some of the characters' writing. I would argue every character in the series needed to be reworked, but the 3 that I felt were the worst of the bunch were Nick, Kyo, and Rena. Nick was meant to be the straight man of the group who didn't trust the Yenirs at first. Of course, over time in the story, he would have moments with them that would help grow their friendship together, and Nick would eventually accept them. But over time, Oh my god, hey, what's up? How's it going? Yellow hands, oh my god. Yeah, no, I accidentally, I was getting a cough drop. And the bag for the cough drops looks very similar to the other bag. So I opened up one of the bags blindly without checking. And when I went to put my hand in, it's like, what the hell? Like, what the fuck? And when I said, it's like fucking a bag of turmeric. I guess it's because, like, I don't know. I think it's my mom's, like, it's like an organic bag of turmeric. But it's like, ew, what the fuck? So I had to go to the bathroom and wash. But hey, welcome on in. Yeah, I'm talking about why my webcomic series, I'm choosing to shelve it and not work on it anymore. So I'm getting to the reason involving the writing choices. So yeah, just sit back, relax. There's a TLDR. I'm gonna upload the link to this document after the stream, but I'm discussing it here. If you have any questions, feel free to post it. I'll read it. But also, I should probably change this thing real quick. Okay, let's get back to it because I don't want to get too sidetracked. Okay, so Nick, so yeah, we're talking about Nick, the main character, the main human character. But over time, I felt like he wasn't as interesting of a character, especially compared to the Ymir and even some of the other human characters. Heard you. Hey, you Squid, what's up? What's up? Welcome on in. Sorry, I'm like using a cough drop, so I'm sorry if I'm like my speech is a little weird. I'm not used to talking a lot. When a story has both human and non-human characters, you have to find a way to make the human characters interesting enough that people will still like them, even if they love the non-human characters. I didn't want to pull Steven Universe where the fans only cared about the aliens and hated the humans, except for Connie and Greg because they were cool. What I mean by that is that this is something I've noticed in a lot of media that does this, where when there's media where you have both human and non-human characters, typically I feel like audiences and fans are going to be more interested in the non-human character more than the human character. Like, I feel like they're going to gravitate towards the non-human characters a lot more. Obviously, this doesn't apply to every media, but I feel like this is something I've seen a lot. I've been lurking for a bit. Oh, cool. You know, feel free to lurk. Feel free to, like, you know, jump in and out, however you feel comfy with. But to go back on what I said, I feel like there's this thing in a lot of media where when you have a cast of characters and a good chunk of them are non-human and the other half is human, I feel like because a lot of the non-human characters are usually like the very unique or sometimes mysterious, or there's like a lot of, sometimes they'll even make the characters like have very exaggerated personalities, and then the human characters are more grounded to reality. And the thing is, you have to be kind of careful with that because you end up having, again, I don't want to make fun of Steven Universe. I'm not trying to call them out, but the thing is, I think what happened with Steven Universe that the fan base had was that because there's the mystery element of the story of it with the crystal gems and their alien species. Oh, and because like they set up the story where you want to know everything about the crystal gems and their history and everything. And then, but then everything is in Steven's perspective. And it worked to solve some elements of the mystery, but then there were episodes involving like the Beach City resident humans. And again, I'm not trying to hate on Steven Universe. I think there's a lot of really amazing things with the show, but I think it was very easy for people to kind of dislike the human characters. I feel like Greg and Connie are more or less the exception because they're very important to Steven himself. But I feel like the Beach City resident episodes, it's like I remember hearing a lot of fans say like, oh, why do we need an episode about this dude or that dude? Where's the gems? Where's the gem stuff? Give us the gem stuff. I want to know their story. I want to know about the diamonds. I want to know what the war was, blah, blah, blah. Like basically, I think in the case of Steven Universe, because there was also the mystery element, that's what also happened that added to that. But essentially with Ymir's, my idea was to make Nick kind of the straight man that like had to put up with these crazy ass aliens. But I think there came a point where I'm not gonna lie, I feel like sometimes I made him just a little too mean. And I also think I made him a little bit too, no, he's not normal, but like, I think the problem with Nick is that I think he was a little bit too grounded in reality. He was too much of a straight man. And when you have a series where a lot of the characters, even the human characters, have very quirky personalities, like it can work, but I feel like I didn't make it work for Nick. And I think ultimately I kind of felt like he was a little bit too boring. I feel like the interesting parts were starting to kind of get lost. So that's kind of how I feel about Nick. I think the straight man idea can still work. I've seen it work, but I think I just didn't make it work the way I wanted to with Nick. You know what I mean? I feel like he's an example of a character that I should have thought more about how I would have done him, especially because he's the main character. He's the main human character. So he's a character that we see everything, not completely in his perspective, but like he's the central character. Moving forward, okay. Rena was another character I struggled writing with, and I think I needed more. Wait, why did I write this sentence? Hold on. That I struggled writing. No, that I needed more time to write. That's a better term. Rena was a character that I needed more time to write. My issue was that originally she was supposed to be a girly girl, but also a bit of a femme fatale type. Ami was the animal lover and the sweet girl. Hayuki was the quiet, shy girl that was also brave and strong, and Kari was the super cute little sister and kind of the mascot character, but I did have legit plans for her. So yeah, she was a mascot. She was kind of meant to be a little bit mascot-y, but there was going to be an actual heavy plot with her, especially with Hayuki because they're sisters. There was going to be a heavy plot, but essentially the idea was that the original version of Rena was kind of meant to be very girly, but a bit like badassery, like bit femme fatale. And then Ami was kind of the sweet down-to-earth girl that loved animals, and then Hayuki was quiet and shy, but she was secretly very strong. You know, like the girls, I was trying to like balance them out, and that was the original version. Well, obviously Ami and Hayuki and Kari kind of more or less stayed the same, as you could tell. Oh yeah, I forgot about that bottom part. We'll get to that. Thing was, I felt like people would have hated her as a super feminine girly girl who loved makeup and fashion, because that's considered a stereotype of women. So in a panic state, I rewrote her to be a tomboy, but I just still didn't want her as a tomboy that hated feminine stuff. I still wanted her to be a tomboy, but still loved girl. Wait. Hold on, again, this is gonna be me rewriting sentences, so I apologize. I wanted her to be a tomboy who still loved girly things. So that was the direction. Who still loved girly things. Hold on, I gotta rewrite this sentence. I'm not gonna lie, when I wrote this document, I was gonna edit it, but then a lot of shit happened this week, so I didn't have time to re-edit it, so I'm doing it live on stream. Okay, so yeah, okay, I'm just gonna say this. I bolded this. I might change it, but I bolded this part because I needed to get this out of my chest. Obviously, it's 2025. Women can like whatever the fuck they like. They can be girly pops. They can be tomboys. They can be feminine and masculine. They can like feminine and masculine things. I mean, that, you know, it still applies. Women can be whatever the fuck they want to be. No one else, including other women, have the right to dictate what you can and can't be. Basically, the thing with Rena, and I don't want to get into the details because it's a huge ass can of worms, and I don't want to really get into that kind of controversial stuff. But the TLDR is that there was a time, I think sometime in like 2010, where the idea of portraying a girl who loved makeup and fashion and things that were considered to be overly feminine or overly girly, I felt maybe, I don't know, maybe it was social media or YouTube or whatever, but I felt that I noticed a lot of people really did not like that. And when I say a lot of people, I actually think a lot of it came from women who thought of that as like very stereotypical. And I understand the reasons behind it. But basically, because I felt that and I was scared that people would not like Rena, I panicked and I wrote her to be a tomboy that still liked a little bit of girly stuff, but she was clearly a tomboy. That was my approach to her. And the thing is, I don't dislike Rena being a tomboy. Like, I actually kind of like her being balanced. That was, I kind of had the idea of making her just simply balanced. When you think about it, in a way, a femme fatale kind of has that balancedness in a way. I mean, you know, they're kind of meant to be like sexy, but they're tough and whatever. And I don't mind her being a tomboy. I think the problem with Rena, and okay, I didn't bring this up. Okay. Basically the problem was, I think what really came down to it is that I never really thought about what her flaw, like what her character development was overall later on. Because like, I think when she was meant to be a little bit more feminine, I had a little bit of like, I was gonna have there was gonna be something a little bit more about her showing that like, oh, just because you're girly doesn't mean you can't be tough. And then when I made her into a tomboy, that kind of contradict that, because it's like she's mostly a tomboy, so why does she have to, you know, she doesn't really, you know, she kind of leans into the tomboyness. I mean, not to say that she can't stand up for other women or feminine women, but the idea was that her original backstory was gonna be more about like showing people that you can still be cutesy and like a lot of girly stuff and still be tough, kind of like a magical girl. I kind of maybe wanted to lean towards that, but then because I ended up chickening it out, I didn't know what to do in terms of her being a tomboy. I mean, I could have literally done the same thing when I think about it, but the thing was, Rena, what ended up being, also I didn't add this, but I'll say it here. I think I accidentally, I'm gonna confess, oh, actually I wrote it here, but okay, you know what, I'll continue the story. But yeah, that was basically what I struggled with. Anyways, as time passed on, I ended up being really stumped with writing Rena. Also, I felt like the way she was portrayed, her main personality was just being mean to Kyo. Although the setup would be Kyo doing something bad, I still wasn't happy about the fact that most of her on-screen moments was just her yelling at Kyo. She felt one-noted to me, and I felt like she needed a lot of rework. Yeah, that was another problem. I felt like I portrayed her because her introduction had her being introduced alongside with Kyo, and I feel like her entire personality next to Kyo was just Kyo says something dumb and perverted, and then she retaliates and yells at him, and like, as a little interaction thing is fine, but when like that is your main thing on screen on the comic all the damn time, that gets kind of old. And sure, I could have continued the story and have more dimension, I could have fixed that problem overall, but yeah, like, I think this was another issue about the whole her being portrayed as a tomboy, where she was portrayed being kind of a mean, and I didn't like that later on. I didn't like that portrayal later on. So again, this is a case of like, I just did not like, I think the problem too, and okay, maybe this is a bias thing, I like Rena, but I think, I'm gonna be real with you, there were so many things that I think compared to the other girls, she was the least that I had prepared for, because I had to change her a lot. I knew what I wanted to do with Ami, and with Ami, she could have been tweaked a little bit, but I think her overarching story was still there. It was still solid. And same with Hayuki, her overarching story was solid. But Rena did not have an overarching story. Like, I didn't have anything to focus on what she needed to deal with, what she needed to overcome, because I kept changing how feminine and how tomboy or how masculine she was. And it got to a point where it kind of, one element contradicted another and vice versa. So again, she was a character that I struggled with how to convey it. And again, obviously women can be whatever the fuck they want to be. No one can dictate that. There's still a lot of things I could have done. There's no bad concept with it, but it's the execution. So that's what I mean with Rena. Speaking of other characters, then there's Kyo. We're about to get to something that, again, guys, this is my own Google Docie. I'm about to cancel myself again. I'm about to expose myself. Man, right before my 2.0. How amazing. Oh boy. Okay, we're gonna talk about Kyo because this is me calling myself out. I'm about to expose myself. All right, time to cancel myself again. I gotta confess. I gotta make a confession. Lord, please forgive me. For I have sinned. Okay, no, not like that. Ladies, please forgive me. Don't be hard on me. I've always had a guilty pleasure for stupid, perverted characters in anime. I love Master Roshi in Dragon Ball because he's such a dumbass and all the ladies beat him up for it. I'm sorry. I will say this. Master Roshi is different. I don't like the grape guy. What's his name? Mineta from My Hero. Not him. He sucks. He actually is like creepy and gross. I don't like that. Master Roshi is a different flavor. He's different, okay? But yeah, that's my confession. I'm sorry, everybody. When I first wrote Kyo, I wanted him to be the nerd inventor of the group, but instead of sticking with the stereotypical nerd personality, I gave him the flirty player / pervert personality. At first, I really liked this personality. Hey, I personally have no issues with it. Wait, let me rewrote this. Actually, I'm gonna get rid of it because, okay, again, I have a guilty pleasure with like anime, like old school, stupid, perverted anime characters. Like, there's a different flavor with it. And I'm about to address this. I'm actually going to be serious with this because we're about to talk about that. Problem is, not everybody likes this personality nor character, especially women. Especially women who have dealt with people like this in real life in worse ways than some. I completely understand why this character would not sit well for a lot of people. I feel, and this is something I will say, I actually do think it's good that nowadays we don't get a lot of these characters, especially in anime. Again, Mineta's there, but it's like, nobody likes him. He sucks. I do think ultimately it's good that they're kind of toning down on this kind of stuff because, yeah, like when you think about it, yeah, like there's no sugarcoating it. There's parts of it. It's another form of like kind of like sexual harassment. And yeah, I don't think it's like in some elements. Obviously, we shouldn't be encouraging that personality. That's a big no-no. I'm also very serious about this, you know. Look, I've been catcalled before, so I know what it's like. The thing is, I think here's what I think. I think it's good that this isn't common in media anymore. I think that's a good thing. But my only argument is that I think okay, how do I say this? I understand why. I think it's important, like, because of how it is nowadays that maybe we shouldn't have too many of these characters. So this is something I kind of agree with. But at the exact same time, like, hear me out. Master Roshi, yes, I mean, you know, he has his perverted tendencies, but I think his positive tendency was that he was still kind of a mentor for Goku and a couple of other characters. And also, I feel like, okay, also Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, the women were bad bitches. Like, they could kill you. So like, I feel like they're never, I'm gonna be real, I never felt like, oh, this man was perverted and got away with it. He was always getting beat up by the ladies. They always yelled at him. And let's be real, the ladies were tough as fuck. They could kill that man if they wanted to. So I feel like in that position, like, obviously, yeah, Goku's a Saiyan and Vegeta, but compared to Master Roshi, I feel like the ladies could kick his ass. So like, for me, I never felt threatening or like weird about it. But again, I understand, you know, in a perfect world, media is media. It's not meant to be like a super, like, you know, obviously just because this is an anime doesn't mean you should imitate in real life. I agree with that. But at the same time, I know that times have changed where a lot of people, especially in 2010s, a lot of people have opened up to things involving, you know, sexual harassment. And we're living in a time where obviously we're trying not to encourage that anymore. We're trying to stand up for that, which I agree is a good thing. That's a very heavy good thing. But I think because we're pushing towards that, it also resulted in like kind of the way media opens up to these things. And on the one hand, obviously, I'm not saying like, obviously, yeah, like I do think that for now, it's important to kind of like not have these kinds of characters too often. But on the other hand, I think there's a distinction between enjoying like something in like the fantasy fictionalized way and then having that influence in like a real life way. And again, in the case of Master Roshi from Dragon Ball, you know, yeah, he's a dumb pervert, but it's like, I can still, it's like just because I like Master Roshi in this fictional piece of media doesn't mean I'm gonna like a guy who acts that way towards me in real life. Like, I think there's comprehension and distinction. But again, I understand with how the world is changing, with how things now are nowadays, I do think it's important to kind of push against that kind of behavior and stand up. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that until we can live in a perfect world where people can distinct fantasy from reality, comprehend and acknowledge like problematic stuff and not repeat it, until we can get to a perfect world like that, or at least close to perfect, I think it is important to not have these types of characters show up too often. I need a drink. Been talking too much. I'm so sorry. Anyways, let's move on. Personally, I think there is still a way to have this type of character in a series, but it really comes down to the tone and target demographic. Admittingly, I didn't pay attention to that when writing Years. I've always said that my series would only have swears and very minor violence, but overall anyone over the age of 10 could easily enjoy it. But now I realize that maybe I should have paid more attention to what my tone and target demographic would be. That's also another important thing. I don't think you should be obsessed too much with target demographic. Like, it's not like you gotta sanitize your shit because it's for kids or anything like that. But obviously, it's like you kind of have to get a gauge of like, you know, that's why, like, for example, video games have the ERSB rating, because yeah, some games have violence and sex and everything like that. And I think like it's important to gauge the sense of tonally, how appropriate is the series? Does it get into some deep topics? Does it have triggering subjects? Obviously Kyo was meant to be more like, again, he was more like Master Roshi. I wouldn't say that he's a triggering character. Like, if anything, his whole character development was about him being less of a pervert. But I feel like, again, like, you know, it really comes down to like what you think is appropriate and inappropriate. But I think there are some things that it's like, yeah, obviously you don't want a kid to be exposed to like too much like jokes about violence or sex and anything like that. So yeah, I do think there is an importance to it. Not to the extent that you have to sanitize and act like some kind of like stupid executive in a company that censors shit. But again, it's just having a bit of awareness of that. I need to drink my water. I'm gonna keep going because my throat is starting to hurt. So I'm gonna keep going. I personally still like Kyo, but I think I would have toned him down a lot more. Still keeping a bit of flirtiness, but not going overboard. As I mentioned, I think all of the characters needed some reworking, but some were worse than others. While this could have been fixed over time, I didn't feel right continuing the series with how the characters were currently portrayed. Reason number 3, not liking the process plus constant work plus quality drop. One of the toughest things about working on a webcomic series is having a big buffer of updates ready to post. Having to keep that buffer big with more pages can be a process. At first, I had a really great and reliable process that allowed me to make 10 to 15 pages a month with no issues and have it all done in time. I actually enjoyed making lots and lots of pages in batches rather than in single ones individually. It was like making cookies. You can make batches of them rather than one cookie at a time. But what sucked about most of that was not having lots of personal free time to draw other things and constantly having to do things on time. Yeah, I brought that up earlier. The constant scheduling and lack of proper free time was so much for me, especially when I would give myself a break for a month after a huge batch of pages was done, but then I had to get back. But then getting back to work was stressful. Over time, it became difficult to keep up with the constant workflow. Another issue I had begun to notice, especially in the later chapters, was the overall quality of the pages. They say when you make a comic series, the first page is always going to suck in terms of art skills. Actually, I'm going to say art quality. The first page is always going to suck in terms of art quality. But the more you draw, the better the quality of the pages become. I remember being very dedicated to making chapter 1 look amazing. I even used references for the background, 3D models for poses, and other good things. Problem was, chapter 1 took me so long to make because of me wanting it to look good. Later on, as I was trying to balance the buffer and getting the pages out in time, I started to rush the drawing process of the pages more quickly. At first, I was still trying to use the references to help me out in the process, but then I became more focused on getting pages done and completed ASAP, that I started to rush through the pages. I would overdo myself a lot in how many pages I would get done. But then I realized over time that rushing out these pages and not using references completely dropped the quality of the pages. Backgrounds look bad. It was supposed to be bad. No, you know what? I'm gonna say backgrounds look flat. Word balloons were clunky, and too many of the pages either had the exact same layout or too many pages had nothing but close-ups of the characters. During my initial hiatus, I noticed this and felt ashamed of myself. Rather than the later chapter looking better than chapter 1, they looked worse. While I still want to work on comic series, especially for graphic novels, this experience made me learn two things. One, maybe gain more experience with shorter series, and 2, use a more simple human design for the human characters that look nice. So what basically happened to me was that in the very beginning, for like chapter 1 and even chapter 2, I really wanted Ynir's to look really good, and I used references, backgrounds, and everything. And I don't think chapter 1 is the most visually appealing. I still have issues with it, but what I notice is that, for example, chapter 1 and 2, there was attempts at backgrounds. There was like at least an attempt at like getting good composition, backgrounds, posing, and everything. Like there felt more dynamicism, even if it didn't look good. In the later chapters, when I was starting to catch up with the buffer and I was struggling, I took the shortcut route, which was basically like, don't worry about the pose, don't worry about backgrounds, just get to the story immediately. And I started like cutting off the time of using backgrounds, poses, references, all for the sake of getting the page done and complete. And later on, it got to a point where like basically I looked at chapter 1 and then looked at chapter like 5 and 6, and I realized that basically the quality just like really like dropped because I stopped using references and poses and 3D models to help me out. It really dropped. Also, and again, you've heard of same face syndrome or same body syndrome. I had same page syndrome, where like some of the pages had the exact same panel layout, the exact same thing, and the same composition. And I had a habit of like basically doing a lot of close-ups on the characters' faces so that I would have an excuse not to draw the backgrounds. I would do one basic background and then everything else you wouldn't see, but that had an issue. So yeah, it got to the point where I think the biggest problem was that I focused on quality over, I focused on quantity over quality and making the deadline, not having to take a hiatus, but then the quality of the comics suffered. It absolutely suffered. Like, I wouldn't say it was shitty, but I just wasn't happy. Again, you're supposed to get better at drawing comics over time, not get worse. And I think what really happened was that instead of taking time to make each page look really good with backgrounds and references, I was more focused on making sure that each week there was an update. And then I was rushing so much on it that I dropped the quality, I took shortcuts. And I think this is an important lesson. Well, okay, I had a teacher that once told me that there's nothing wrong with taking a shortcut as long as you don't drop the quality of your pages. So like, if you find a process that works faster, but you can still have a good quality in your art, nothing wrong with that. But in the case of Ymir, I took shortcuts that basically kind of reduced the quality because I didn't care about poses or backgrounds or anything. I just wanted to get the page done and out. And I look back on that and I'm kind of disappointed and ashamed in myself for not sticking to the references and backgrounds. So that's pretty much the explanation. Okay, this is the final big reason. Again, there's other reasons, but this is considered to be like the top 4 big ass reasons. That is the problem with webcomics that aren't one-off pages and self-contained stories. Yeah, like I think like it really comes down to like how you schedule them, how you do like your planning. And I already went into all the details of it, but yeah, like again, and I said this earlier, I think it would have worked better for me to get more experiences with shorter stories. And for the next reason, use more simple human character designs. Reason number 4, not liking the human character designs. Speaking of human character designs, I eventually did not like Nick nor Nina's overall character design. Drawing them was becoming a pain in the butt. I love drawing the Ymir since they had such simple designs and fun to pose and express. But the human characters were anything but that. Again, you know something is wrong when your non-human characters are more fun to draw than the human characters. I think the main problem was the art style I chose for the human characters. I was going for an anime-esque style that had a semi-proportional sizes. It was still stylized, but the anatomy and body was still meant to be somewhat realistic. I honestly don't know why I settled for that and not go with an easier style. I felt so pressured drawing the human characters to look right and accurate, and doing that made them way less fun than the Ymirs. While I still want to challenge myself in drawing humans, I think going forward, I may choose to go for a more cartoonier, simpler style for the humans. Something that would make them fun, but still enjoyable to draw. Also wanted to mention that the overall designs of the human characters could have been more tested. I definitely would have tried to redesign them, especially the hairstyles. Basically, I had this problem. I'm gonna be real with you. This is why I'm a deer girl and not an anime girl. Okay, but jokes aside, I have this weakness where I feel like when I draw non-human characters, I can have so much fun. I can pose them, express them. I feel so loose drawing non-human characters. I can have fun with shapes, the posing, like the expressions. Like I feel like non-human characters feel very fun like that. Like the expressiveness and like that with non-human characters is fun. But the moment I draw humans, I feel like my brain, maybe it's trauma from art school, but I feel like my brain, girl, you're preaching to the choir. Oh my God. I feel like the problem with my brain is that, maybe it's a trauma from art school, is that like, I feel like if I'm drawing a human character that is my OC, they need to have like, not exactly realistic, like a realistic style, but like the proportionals had to lean a little bit towards realism. especially when it comes to posing and everything like that. That's why earlier I mentioned that for chapter 1, I was using 3D models to pose. You know, like in Clip Studio, they have the free 3D models to pose and help you out with that kind of stuff. That's why Nick and Nina, they had something like that, or at least that was what I was attempting to do. Their art style obviously had the anime look, but the proportions of their bodies was meant to be close to, like, not realistic. Their heads are obviously big, they have big anime eyes, but it's like the body was meant to be more something like similar to actual humans. And it got to a point where, I'm gonna be real with you, I felt so pressured to make it accurate that it started to feel like a chore. It really felt like a chore. I felt like they were so stiff, and I think it's because I have that mentality glued because of art school. I think that was your problem, mistake. Yeah, like, pretty much as I mentioned, I think next time, and actually funny enough, I have recently, I remember recently I was drawing a bunch of human characters, and I decided to pretty much just go stylistic. I still want to, like, obviously I do want to still keep the habit of, like, once in a blue moon, actually look up references and use references and draw from, like, you know, do observational human drawings and posing. I still want to keep that because I think it's important to still study, like, observational studies, do that stuff, especially for posing and understanding, like, muscles and bodies. But in terms of, like, a project that I love and something, it's like, if I want to, like, there are ideas I have that involve human characters, but I think I'm gonna go for something a little bit more stylized, a little bit more cartoony, because I want to have, because I think the biggest thing about a webcomic, and something that I agree with, is you're gonna be drawing the same characters over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Make them enjoyable. Enjoy drawing them. If that means they have to have a simple art style, if you have to simplify it, then do so, because it's kind of like animation, where, like, the reason why some animation nowadays is so simple is because, like, you gotta redo all the details and all that shit, and, like, redrawing a bunch of details over and over and over and over and over again, that's a pain in the ass. So, like, that, for me, that's a lesson. Again, this is what I learned from the webcomic, is I think next time around, if I'm working on a project involving a human character, I'm gonna stick to, like, a bit of a simpler cartoony art style, just so that, and also design them with a design that I really like. Okay, so we're about to get to the conclusion part. We've already talked. May I chime in with a bit of an explanation of how I get over this? Actually, yeah, sure. Go for it, dude. Go for it. I actually want to hear your, like, actual opinion on it. Go for it. I will say we're actually getting close to the conclusion. But before we wrap up the conclusion, I do have a very, very important message to artists, every artist out there, to any artists hearing this. This is something, like, this is a big takeaway I need you to pay attention to. I wrote this not just for myself, like, this might come off as therapy for myself, but this is something that I want a lot of artists to hear. Well, conclude. I will talk then. Okay, I'll let people answer questions when we get to the conclusions. But before we do, this is something very, very important. And I wrote this part before we get to the conclusion, because this is something that I think a lot of artists need to hear. They need to hear this. Okay, actually, let me get some water because my throat is getting to me. Okay, we're about to get to the conclusion. We're about to get to this very important message, so please pay attention. This is very important, especially to all the artists. An important message to artists. You're not a failure. You are not a failure. Before I get to my final thoughts and conclusions, I want to say something very important to me related to this. And this is me being really serious. Like, this is no jokes, no hee hee ha ha, no nothing. This is actually me being like mad serious about this. Over the course of my life as an artist and watching other artists online, I'm just fixing a typo here. Over the course of my life as an artist and watching other artists online, I've seen so much doomer humor about how hard it is to be an artist and how easy to see yourself as a failure. I've seen so much doomer humor about how hard making a webcomic is and how so many people want to make one, have an idea, and never make it a reality. About how webcomics are just just the cheaper medium for animators who fail to make their dreams come true. I've seen so much different jokes about it. First off, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, y'all need to fucking stop with the fucking doomer humor shit. I know, like, again, this is me, sorry, we went from me having a professional talk to ranting, but this is still very important. I know we cope through dark comedy and self-deprecation, but doomer humor is the absolute worst thing you can do to yourself. My number one biggest dislike is doomer humor because of how absolutely damaging it can be, not just to artists, but young folk and your mental health. Not just to artists. Wait, hold on. Let me fix this. It can be damaging not just to artists, but to yourself and your mental health. These horrible jokes not only discourage you from overcoming this, like overcoming your problems and moving forward, but they damage your mental health and keep you in a state of self-loathing and overall hating yourself. It's like a toxic friend who makes fun of the things you love, but they also remind you that they're your friend, so you end up accepting their jokes. Especially for artists, I know things are tough. I know things in the industry isn't the best, and it's easy to fall into the trap of using doomer humor to cope with uncertainty, disappointment, and frustration. But let me tell you this. Is it really fair to shit on the things you love? Is it fair to make fun of a career path you wanted to do? Is it fair to make fun of all the times and efforts you put in art school? Is it fair to insult yourself as an artist? Because if you ask me, none of this is really fair for you nor your mental health. The reason I say this is because there was a time I was scared to stop working on Years. I'm being very serious about this. I was scared to accept the idea of quitting the series because I was scared I was secretly validating all the doomers with their shitty jokes. I wanted to prove a point of not giving up on my series, so I continued. But funny enough, I don't see myself as a failure, and you shouldn't too. Me no longer working on Years isn't something I see as a failure. I've learned so much from working on the series. I gained so much skills, knowledge, and perspective as a storyteller. None of that is in vain just because I'm not working on Years. If anything, the skills and experience I learned from Years will actually help me with future projects I have in mind. Ideas that I wouldn't feel comfortable doing if I didn't work on Years. It wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't me failing as an artist. It didn't make me regret my choices nor my college degree. And more importantly, it doesn't make me any less of an artist because of the choice I made. The reason I am making a big deal about all this is because I know so many artists online who struggle with projects and the constant feelings of failure. It's easy to compare yourself online, feel terrible, and cope with doomer humor despite the damage it is to your mental health. I'm going to change this a bit. The damage it is to your mental health. But I want you to know that you're not a failure. Even if a project didn't turn out the way you wanted to, that doesn't mean you're a failure. You're still a valid artist. You're still a valid artist, and no project should decide your worth. Hell, even if the project couldn't be finished, you've gained experience and learned a lot of cool things. That's still with you regardless of the project. That is still with you regardless of the project. To all the artists reading this, my biggest takeaway from all this is you're not a failure of an artist, and stop using doomer humor. And please take care of yourself and your mental health. Your mental health should always be a top priority above all else. You're still an artist no matter what. Honestly, I think this part pretty much just sums up how I feel about this. I want to add one more thing. Again, I know a lot of people who have dreams of wanting to work in an industry, and sometimes things don't work out the way you wanted to. Sometimes you couldn't get the job you wanted, you couldn't go into the industry you wanted. I know that a lot of people use doomer humor as a way to cope with their frustration and disappointment. You know, like, I know a lot of people that just, I know a lot of coping mechanisms. I've seen people use the coping mechanism of, like, basically, another thing about doomer humor, just to add to this, is you devalue your dreams, the things you love. You put lower value on that because it's easier to just devalue something you love than to acknowledge how disappointed and angry and unfair you feel that things couldn't work out. I think, like, not to call out a certain group of people, but I've seen a lot of animators that use doomer humor because, yes, I know the animation industry is, like, going through a really rough time right now. I think what happens with the young dreaming animators that feel that huge sense of failure and disappointment and frustration is that they use doomer humor to devalue their love of animation and just see it as like, oh, I guess I wasted my time with my degree being an animator. I should have been like a doctor or a lawyer, ha ha ha. Like, they say it like that, but it's like I said earlier, that's not fair to be like that. Don't insult something you love. Don't devalue something you care about. I know, listen, you're looking at the girl that bottled up her emotions for a very long time. It's hard. I know it's easy to run away from the things that make you frustrated and angry. And, like, it's easier to just pretend like you didn't care about it to begin with. I think that's a lot of ways people cope with it. But I say this, the reason I made such an emphasis about this part of the story and for my thing is that I don't want people to take, like, what I want people to understand is that even if things in life don't work out the way you wanted to, that doesn't mean you're a failure. That doesn't mean that the things you learn didn't have some value, didn't value to you. Like, there's value. You still learned a lot. You still got a lot from it. Just because you couldn't, you know, again, maybe there's an animator that couldn't get that dream job in a company you wanted because they laid off a bunch of artists, or maybe you wanted to work on a project and then a lot of things happened in your life where your mental health took a deep toll. First off, your mental health should always be your number one priority. Your mental health should always be a number one priority. But what I want people to understand is, instead of relying on horrible, shitty doomer humor that devalues your love and passions just because you're scared, it's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to feel frustrated and angry. And also, I will say, I know people that will stay in that frustrated, angry, like doomer defeatist mentality. So obviously there is a case of like, yes, it's okay to let out the negative, nasty feelings about how you feel, but don't, like, it kind of works the other way. Bottling up the negative emotions can be damaging, but if you let the negative emotions stick with you, and even when you express it, you could also end up in the same thing of using doomer humor as a coping thing. So the point I'm trying to say is that if you are an artist who, or maybe like, here's another thing to say. Maybe you're an artist that once upon a time you loved art, and maybe something happened in your life where you couldn't do the thing you love, and you've been using a lot of doomer humor to cover up your frustrations or a lot of stuff. I just implore you, like, please, like, stop with the doomer humor. Maybe seek therapy, maybe write out your feelings in a journal or maybe in a document or whatever, but just overall, just please take care of yourself, because artist or not, you are a valuable human being. You don't deserve to shit on yourself, shit on the things you love, devalue yourself. And I've had that experience. I need you to understand, I speak of this in experience. I didn't use doomer humor, but I devalued myself secretly. And like, again, the last 8 years has been like, you know, I'll talk about that later on, but like, I learned a lot in the last 8 years about valuing yourself, having self-esteem and confidence. And I think, honestly, my biggest takeaway to everybody is like, it's okay to let out some feelings. It's okay to process things. But just remember that even if things didn't work out, that doesn't mean that you're stuck like that forever. Just because you couldn't get that one dream job or you couldn't finish that project doesn't mean you'll never, it doesn't mean you'll never get another great opportunity. It doesn't mean you'll never be able to finish or complete a project. Like, there are still so many opportunities you can still achieve. You can still get a lot of things. You're not a failure because you couldn't get this or that. Like, you can still get a lot of things. You learned, you gained experience. Hell, there's a lot of VTubers who, I mean, I'm not going to talk about VTuber drama, but I know a lot of VTubers that wanted to get something and then things changed and they didn't give up. And that's inspiring. So what I'm just trying to say to a lot of people is like, you know, it's okay to be upset when things turn a different way, but don't let the bad experience stick with you, or don't try to hold it back or cover it up. Process them. Let out your feelings, write it down, but also try to kind of pick yourself back up. You don't have to do it super quickly. It can take a while. Take your time. But the important thing is that even if you failed at, or even if you couldn't work on something, even if you couldn't finish up something or you couldn't get a job, that doesn't make you a failure. That doesn't mean you can't pick yourself back up, heal, process, and move forward. But the biggest takeaway is that in order to do that, you can't use doomer humor, because doomer humor prevents you from healing and processing it. That's my biggest takeaway. I hope to anybody listening that you were able to kind of, again, I'm sorry if the wording is weird and everything, but I hope you guys understand exactly what I mean by what I have to say. Now the conclusion. Now we're getting to the conclusion. Here's the final conclusion. Let me get some water. Let me get some water real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, conclusion time. Thank you to everybody who came to this point in the document. I am aware of how long the document is, and I appreciate your time and patience. And again, to the people watching this on stream or the VOD watchers, thank you too. Like, I appreciate that. I see you guys out there, and the lurkers too. I see you guys as well. One thing I want to clarify to those confused with the idea of me shelving my webcomic series, I want to clarify this because even though I will no longer be working on Years, I still love and cherish the series, and I don't want to completely throw it away for good. My shelf is more of my inner storytelling thought process, my brainstorming process that also includes rewrites and reworks of ideas. For Years, I feel like there are good parts to it that I think can still work. I've always been a fan of the idea there's no such thing as a bad concept, just bad execution. I don't see Years as a bad idea or bad concept, nor bad execution. More like a series that needs more time to develop and be reworked before choosing to begin the series. To everyone who has supported me, who supported the series, the characters, and myself, I want to extend my absolute thank you to everybody. I'm so sorry if the news disappointed you all. I know some of you were waiting for more news about this and maybe didn't want this. I hope you can forgive me for all this. And again, I am aware, like, again, I am also sorry if I made a lot of false promises about this series. So again, I am very sorry, and I can understand people being disappointed with me, and I completely get that. I take full accountability and responsibility for that. I do have other more smaller ideas I plan to do, especially for 2026 and I'll put and beyond. I currently stream as a VTuber online. I mean, you guys are seeing it in the VOD. I will leave the links below where to find me. I also am active on Twitter, X, Blue Sky, and YouTube, and more. Be sure to check it out. One last thing, because Years meant so much to me, I do hope that maybe in the distant future, I can somehow bring the series back to life, even as a reboot. I am not promising anything, and especially not anytime soon. I mean more like in the long distant future, after completing lots of my personal projects. This is why I didn't want it to say canceled. Maybe one day, Years can come back in a new life with a fresh new coat of paint. Thank you for all of the support of Years. Thank you for your time and patience. And thank you all for your understanding. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of the document. Thank you for listening to me rant and yap and everything. Oaxaca, you mentioned that you wanted to say something, you wanted to chime in. If anybody has any questions or wanted to say anything, any comments, questions, now would be a good time. I'm actually going to add something to this document, but this is just like me adding the links, but we're basically at a point where I've pretty much said what I've had to say. This is the long explanation. So again, if anybody has anything to say, any questions, like, I'm going to be adding some stuff, checking some stuff out. We're not going to end just yet. I also want to talk about next week, but before that, again, Oaxaca, if you're still there, you mentioned you wanted to chime in, so you can chime in now. And again, any questions, YouTube, Twitch, now's your time to ask. I'm just gonna add something to this. So wait, oh, the video is still going. Okay, good. The music is still going good. Okay, I just need to add something here real quick. Don't mind me. Okay. I'll bow out of this. Sometimes it's best to keep things to yourself. I mean, if you want to message me privately, like if you don't want to talk about it on stream, that's understandable. You could message me privately. Like I get it. Like if you don't feel comfortable doing it here, like you could you know where to hit me up. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, I'm basically I think we're pretty much gonna be done here. Actually, I ended up being 2 hours. is something else. Oh, okay. Real quick, before we wrap things up, as you guys know, okay, to end this on a positive note, I want to end this on a positive note. Next week is going to be on December 20th at 7 p.m. EST, which should be Saturday. I am debuting my 2.0 model with, it's a brand new model. There's going to be lore. There's going to be some fun little surprises, some fun little things. It's going to be a big deal. So, but I want to talk a little bit real quick about my schedule for next week. I will not be streaming this weekend. Now, Monday and Tuesday, I'm not certain about what I'm gonna do. I'm not sure if I'm gonna stream or not. I will update like my schedule probably on Monday just to let everybody know. What I will say is, more importantly, is for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. That's the important part, so pay attention. So Wednesday is my birthday, my actual birthday. I'm not going to stream on my actual birthday because I'm planning to go out with my family to celebrate. Instead, okay, I'll be real. In reality, you could argue that the birthday celebration is the 2.0. That's the birthday celebration, but that's going to be like the big birthday celebration. But here's the thing. So Wednesday, I will not stream on my birthday because I'm going to be celebrating with the family. Thursday, okay, Thursday is super important. Very important. Thursday is going to be my final stream with my current model, the one that you are currently seeing. This model, this is actually technically my 1.5 model, but it's basically 1.0 but with extra rigging and toggles and stuff. So like the design is 1.0, but I added like a couple of extra goodies. So yeah, so it's 1.5, but you know what I mean. Next Thursday, which will be, if I recall, it is the 18th. That is going to be my final stream in my current model. What we'll be doing is we're actually going to be watching my old lore. But here's the thing that is important. My lore videos, it's like my 2.0 is a continuation of the lore of 1.0. And there's also going to be another thing I'm going to be showing that it's like, basically, I would recommend coming to Thursday stream to catch up on lores, especially if none of you are aware of my lore. I do have the links on my YouTube page. Like, they are on my YouTube page, but to anybody that wants to get reacquainted or wants to follow along with me of the lore, I'm going to be showing that up on Thursday, and then just talking generally about, you know, the last 3 years as being a VTuber. And then Friday, I am not going to stream because I got to prepare for 2.0. And then Saturday is the big 2.0 day. So the big bam kazam. So yeah, that is my schedule for next week. So again, Monday, Tuesday, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Wednesday is my birthday, but I won't be streaming. Thursday is last day of this current model. Friday is the prep day, so no stream. And then Saturday is the big grand day. So yeah, I hope to see you guys there. And yeah, I think that is ultimately going to be for this stream. Let's go back to just chatting. Let's change this. Oh, what am I doing? Okay. I am gonna, oh, wrong thing. Okay, but yeah, thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you guys for hearing me out on this. This was very important. I'm very glad I did this. I really needed to do this because this was something that I needed to close off. Again, I'm gonna be posting the links to the document. I'm gonna be updating on like the websites where Yeeniers is at. I think I'm gonna actually be doing that right after stream. So yeah, thank you guys again for hearing me out. My voice is hurt, so I think I'm gonna wrap things up, but thank you guys so much. I will see you guys next week. Next week is gonna be a biggie, a big busy ass week. I will see you guys then. You guys take care. Have a good weekend. I will see you guys next week. Bye everybody. Bye.